I've been doing more woodworking projects than normal, so I thought it was time to try out a new sander. Here we've got the CRAFTSMAN 5-inch random orbit palm sander. Let's give it a go. If we open this up, not much to our box. Basically, we've got our palm sander. It's called a palm sander because it fits nicely in your palm. Dust collection. That's it. This model has a Velcro style attachment, hook and loop they call it, for 5-inch sanding discs. So this unit you can see has holes in here that match up with holes in your sanding discs. And there's a fan in there to suck in the dust and put it in to this dust collection bag, or you can put your vacuum hose on there. So we're gonna test that out and see how good that does. That would be a big feature for indoors, just to capture that dust. We'll see how that works. Now it's interesting, the evolution of sanders. I have an auto body background. Throughout college, throughout high school and college, I worked in an auto body shop and have a lot of time on one of these palm sanders. But for years and years, they were only available in pneumatic. Some very talented engineers spent a lot of time to condense down electric versions and fit an electric motor and all the gearing required to make a sander in that style in electric. So this is nice. You don't need to haul an air compressor around with you. Just plug it in and you're good to go. Those pneumatic ones work extremely well. It's just you need compressed air to make them work. Now, early generations of these, the square ones, the sheet sanders, if you have experience with that, they were extremely loud. They vibrated like crazy. It felt like they were gonna take off to the moon. But when it actually came to sanding, they did little or nothing. Well, that's because basically those just vibrated the whole thing and didn't really move the sandpaper much. The idea behind these is that this is actually sending the sandpaper around in a random direction, kind of circular, but also down in orbit, random orbit. That's where the name comes from. Also, a lot of these are called dual action, so they actually spin plus throw it out in directions around. So you're getting a lot of relative movement on the sandpaper versus the wood and versus the tool. So if it's been a while, if you tried one of those and hated it and felt like sending it to the moon, I completely get you. It's worth trying a different style again. Now, obviously, there's different grades of tools. There's all the way from the Black & Decker up to the Milwaukees, DeWalt's, Rockwell's. I went with the CRAFTSMAN. It's kind of in the middle. And you could say, well, why don't you buy a better tool that might last longer? Well, in my experience, in this type of sander, the electrical gearing components, the mechanical piece of it lasts quite a long time, especially for a homeowner like myself who's not doing the, woodworking for a living. What fails is the pad here on the bottom. Now, going with a mainstream tool like CRAFTSMAN, I should be able to replace this component when it fails. And the rest of it's just fine. And this hook and loop style kind of separates from the foam pad under it. And that typically is the failure mechanism. And those are pretty common components across your expensive tools to your cheap tools. So that's normally the failure mechanism here. The reason I went with the CRAFTSMAN, it's the most affordable option at about around $60 that has kind of the high performance, as they call it, dust capture, where you can use this bag or hook up to a vacuum. Now you also have a bunch of cordless options in this type of sander now that batteries have evolved to the point where they've got the power density enough to run a tool like this. This kind of tool actually takes quite a bit of energy to do effective sanding. So I don't expect battery life to be extremely great in this type of tool, but it's to the point where it's adequate now, and if you have a couple batteries, you can make it work. I went with the corded option. I'm not gonna do any sanding outside of garage or home where outlets are available, but if you've got a situation like that, obviously you probably wanna go with a cordless version. Now, as far as sanding performance goes, there's a couple things you want to look at. One, it's the speed of oscillation. So this one's 1200 oscillations per minute. And that is a big factor, but what's even more of a factor is the movement and the amount of movement you get out of this pad. Basically, how far it throws it out. We'll try to do a slow-mo and get an idea of this, and that is very difficult to find any specifications on when you're trying to evaluate tools. So that's part of the reason why I'm gonna give this one a go. What you can do is turn it on like that, and then when it's shutting down, when it's on, it's so fast you can't really see it. When it's shutting down, you can see the amount of movement, and this one has pretty good. It's similar to some of the pneumatic ones I've used in the automotive world, so I think this will be pretty good. But let's try to do slow-mo and see how it looks. This is the first project I'm making a tabletop that I've been able to test out our CRAFTSMAN Orbital Sander on. And so far I'm really liking it. It's got good power. There's not a lot of vibration. Some of those old ones, especially the sheet sander, it seems like it would vibrate your hand more than the sandpaper and you'd hardly do anything. So the cutting action is pretty good. It's not real aggressive. I'm starting with a 60 grit. I'm using this Diablo sandpaper product. But overall, I'm really liking it. It does have a fan in here and then holes within the sandpaper that collect the dust. And you can see there's a little bit around the edges. And I've been working the edge a little bit. Obviously, we're not gonna get good dust removal or capture if we're working the edge. A lot of these will be unexposed and sucking fresh air and not getting the dust. But when it's laid flat like this, it does a pretty good job. There's really no dust around, but we'll do this whole job and then we'll look around the garage here, the shop, and see if we've got any dust on our flat surfaces. That would indicate that we're not capturing it all. But I've got a lot of work ahead of me. Starting with 60, going with 80, and then 120. This is a tabletop I've made out of rough sawn cherry. So let's get back at it. About 3/4 of the way done with the top surface of our countertop. I'm about 3/4 of the way done with the top of our tabletop. You can see on the sander there's a good amount of dust building up on the side of it, which isn't unexpected. None of these are going to be perfect. And on the top there's some dust there on my hand. So I'm going to hook up a shop vac to the back here. We can take off the dust collection pouch. You can see it has captured quite a bit there. And I don't feel like I need a respirator or anything like that. In the air, there's very little of this dust. It's capturing the vast majority of it. We'll see if we can get even better with a shop vac attached to it.
So with the shop vac attached, obviously our dust collection performance improved. The sander itself is much cleaner. My hand didn't get any buildup on it. And the piece does have some sawdust on it, but less than before. And overall, this CRAFTSMAN palm sander is performing quite well. It's not the most aggressive cutting, but the benefit of that is even on our wood piece with a 60 grit sandpaper, I don't see any swirl marks or grit whatsoever. I'm still gonna go up to 80, probably finish it off with 120. But at this point on the bottom and the sides, it's not really necessary. So I'm just gonna do it on the top, the place where we look at it. So this piece, especially because I've had higher end sanders, but the pad wears out. And so the sander itself still lasts and it's good, but to replace this usually isn't feasible. I see this one does have exposed screws so you can replace this. So that is a great feature. This piece is going to wear out, you're gonna have to replace it. And the reason for that is most of the work we get on our sander is around the edge, and that works the edge of this foam and our Velcro piece, and it tends to delaminate or come off, and then our sandpaper does not stick properly. So the fact that you can take this off and replace it is a huge benefit. They've learned and they've improved things. You don't need the high-end model to get that now. So this CRAFTSMAN piece, pretty good deal. If you're a homeowner, I don't see any reason to spend more than this on a sander, but again, if you want. However, I do recommend this one. You will not regret it. If you found any value in this review, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching. Adios.